There's again a halving, and this time an ETF approval, and we get a bit more hope, and we get calm, and this is where we are today. So if we look at the past 3 cycles of Bitcoin, we have followed the exact same psychological pattern, which is really interesting. So now we're in Q4 of 2024, we're there in the top. And so the question is, will we continue to move up? Will we again go into a bull market over the next 3 to 6 months? So that's definitely something to watch. Or will the lines cross? Big question. Now, so here we see the year 2025, which is completely made of green colors, historically. So if history is any indicator, it will be an interesting year. Yet, there's always reason to have uncertainty and doubt. Maybe this time the recession will come. Maybe the recession will fall with the next bear market. We don't know. You know, we're currently at a fair price, but even if we think about the next bottom of the bear market, that price is always significantly higher than the current fair price. So probably if that happens and you think about, you know, accumulating Bitcoin, you will never get to the same amount of Bitcoin if you miss out on this bull market. But what if no bull markets happens? What if we do get a recession next year and we just kind of go sideways around that surface area or devalue? Well, that would be just a shift in the 4-year cycle. So the thing to realize here is that the highly overvalued levels from the previous cycle are actually today's fair price.
The cyclical nature of Bitcoin's price behavior is largely driven by its programmed halvings. These events, which occur approximately every 4 years, reduce the number of new Bitcoins entering circulation, making the asset increasingly scarce. According to Rational Root, the most recent halving has brought Bitcoin's inflation rate down to 0.8%, lower than that of gold, reinforcing its scarcity narrative. Root emphasizes that Bitcoin operates on a predictable cycle, with its price action closely following these halvings. Based on past performance, it will likely take another 2 cycles, or approximately 5 to 10 years, before Bitcoin can start truly competing with gold and major fiat currencies like the euro and US dollar. The halving cycles help drive Bitcoin's long-term price appreciation, positioning it as a deflationary asset in contrast to inflationary fiat currencies.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
You might wonder, like, where are we today? Now, we went all the way from 0 to a value of above $1 trillion today. And that is actually really remarkable. Bitcoin really, if you think about it, couldn't have done any better. We're now at the stage where we have institutional interest, where we have nation state interest. You know, Bhutan is mining Bitcoin. El Salvador, Bitcoin is legal tender. The US is talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And also the biggest wealth manager in the world is advocating for Bitcoin to be part of a portfolio. They compare it to digital gold. Well, let's look at Bitcoin and compare it to the analog counterpart. So here we look at a log scale, otherwise Bitcoin would just be a steep curve up. We still have some way to go, maybe about a 10 or 15x to really start competing with gold. But that might happen over the next 5 to 10 years. Now let's also show the halvings in here, which is when the inflation rates gets cut in half from Bitcoin. And we actually surpassed now the 4th halving, which made us go to an inflation rate of about 0.8%, which is lower now than that of gold. So Bitcoin is becoming more scarce than gold itself. We also see a bit of the cyclical behavior with these halvings. And so we see that it takes indeed about 2 more cycles to really start competing with gold. But that might happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Now let's also look at some fiat currencies, for example, the euro. With the euro, we see actually a very similar picture. So also 2 cycles, 5 to 10 years. We could seriously start competing, at least by this comparison of the M2 money supply of these fiat currencies. And the same is true for the dollar, which is the current world reserve currency. So we're actually already competing maybe in 5 to 10 years with the dollar. Now, let's look at a former world reserve currency, the British pound. That looks already possible to really start competing this cycle. And if we plot another country, here is the country of Mexico, then we see that we already surpassed it this cycle, and we might be above it for good now. So with that, Bitcoin is already in the top 15 of world currencies, and so we already surpassed 100 currencies or so, which is really remarkable. There's again a halving, and this time an ETF approval, and we get a bit more hope, and we get calm, and this is where we are today. So if we look at the past 3 cycles of Bitcoin, we have followed the exact same psychological pattern, which is really interesting. So now we're in Q4 of 2024, we're there in the top. And so the question is, will we continue to move up? Will we again go into a bull market over the next 3 to 6 months? So that's definitely something to watch. Or will the lines cross? Big question. Now, so here we see the year 2025, which is completely made of green colors, historically. So if history is any indicator, it will be an interesting year. Yet, there's always reason to have uncertainty and doubt. Maybe this time the recession will come. Maybe the recession will fall with the next bear market. We don't know. But let's add a new dimension to this chart. So we can actually look at this chart also in 3D. And now we can actually see the undervalued and overvalued levels even better. Look at that green zone, that green area that's right in front of us. Now maybe let's spin the cycle a bit, so because we're there in the back, so we have a better look at that green zone. Maybe we can tilt the spiral up a bit. Overvalued and undervalued levels quite well. And a few things stand out here. We can actually see that here we made an all-time high during a recovery phase, which is quite of an exception, but there was a good reason. It was the ETF approval. So there was early hype in the market. In the prior cycle, we actually saw the COVID crash. That was also a bit of an exception right there. Now look at how beautifully all these bottoms of the bear market cluster together there, which would be in about 2 years from here. And so what is interesting, if we highlight here that first quadrant, no single dot has fallen below the surface, which the surface area is actually the fair price of Bitcoin. Now I want to leave you with 2 things here. So because 2 things can happen. We can either go back into a bull market and continue also to get in overvalued price levels. That would mean that, we're currently at a fair price, but even if we think about the next bottom of the bear market, that price is always significantly higher than the current fair price. So probably if that happens and you think about, accumulating Bitcoin, you will never get to the same amount of Bitcoin if you miss out on this bull market. But what if no bull markets happens? What if we do get a recession next year and we just kind of go sideways around that surface area or devalue? Well, that would be just a shift in the 4-year cycle. So the thing to realize here is that the highly overvalued levels from the previous cycle are actually today's fair price. And so I hope this gave you insight into the volatile behavior of Bitcoin, but that's actually all very normal.
One of the key insights from Rational Root's analysis is the concept of Bitcoin's fair price. Root uses a 3D chart to visualize Bitcoin's historical price action and its fair value over time. Even during bear markets, Bitcoin's fair price continues to rise, and Root emphasizes that today's fair price is significantly higher than in previous cycles. For long-term holders, This means that missing out on the current bull market could result in never being able to accumulate the same amount of Bitcoin at lower prices. The volatility in Bitcoin's price is part of its cyclical nature, but the overall trend is upward due to its fixed supply and increasing demand. Bitcoin's role as a deflationary asset in a world of inflationary fiat currencies ensures its long-term value proposition.
And if we look at the M2 money supply of the euro, so the amount of euros that are currently in circulation, we see exponential increase. So we have an exponential curve. And so actually we went over the past 15 years since Bitcoin's invention, we went from $8 trillion to about 16 trillion euros, I should say. And so that's a doubling. And so that also means our purchasing power got cut in half. And we all felt that a bit during the COVID era, where we see here that steep curve up even above the trend. And, where inflation run hot, so they had to really pull the brakes, which they did for a year and a half. But now it seems we're back on the old path. And so we know that the euro will indefinitely go up by 5 to 6% per year. And if we compare this to Bitcoin, which let's plot Bitcoin in here as well, we see a whole different type of curve. Now, Bitcoin is on the right y-axis here. We went from 0 to about 20 million Bitcoin in circulation. But let's just compare the curves. So we have one that flattens out and the other one which increases exponentially. So also with Bitcoin, we can project into the future. So we already know the future supply issuance. So Bitcoin really is about digital scarcity, and its hard cap is so fundamentally different from the euro. It really makes for a different monetary policy. And so the reason I want to talk about this, because many of you might know this, but I find it very important, and I want to do just a practical example. So let's compare the euro and Bitcoin. And we take a bucket of 100%, and you may fill in, for example, your savings that you have in euros or dollars for the euros, and the same for Bitcoin. And we're just going to compare the monetary policy. So I know Bitcoin is volatile, so let's set that aside for a second. So if we plot the data over the past 5 years, we actually see that we lost about 20% of our purchasing power with the euro. And you can take basically any part in the history of the euro, and you will get more or less the same result, about 20% of purchasing power that you lose in 5 years. Now with Bitcoin, we also lost 8%. Well, many of you think Bitcoin, the hard cap of 21 million, but Bitcoin still has an inflation rate, but it's predictable. We can show the halvings in here as well, and so you can see how the curve is a bit steeper before the halving, and it flattens out. So we also know that the 8% that we currently had over the last 5 years of devaluation, it will only be 4% over the next 5 and 2% the 5 years after that. And so this is very different from the euro. So in the euro, our purchasing power gets devalued a lot faster.
As we move into 2025, the outlook for Bitcoin remains uncertain, yet promising. Rational Root's analysis shows that Bitcoin has followed a consistent pattern over its past cycles, and history suggests that the next few years could see significant price appreciation. With institutional adoption, nation-state involvement, and Bitcoin's growing scarcity, the digital asset is positioned to compete with both gold and fiat currencies on a global scale.
Please like and subscribe my channel.